My name is Carol and I'm 57 years old. I spent 3 months saving for this sage green dress, imagining how proud I would feel watching my only daughter walk down the aisle. I never imagined that same daughter would seat me at a table with the waiters and call me an intruder in front of hundreds of guests. But I said nothing. I just smiled. And by the end of that night, her perfect wedding turned into a scene nobody would ever forget. Before I tell you how my own daughter humiliated me in front of everyone she wanted to impress, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. And if stories about mothers who refuse to break touch your heart, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Now let me take you back to where it all began. To understand what happened at that wedding, you need to know the kind of life I lived raising my daughter Megan. Because nothing that happened that night makes sense without knowing what I sacrificed to give her everything she has. I married Richard when I was 23 years old. He was charming, handsome, the kind of man who made you feel like the center of the universe when he looked at you. But that feeling never lasted long. Richard loved himself more than he could ever love anyone else. His career came first. His needs came first. His comfort came first. I was somewhere at the bottom of his list, right below his golf buddies and his expensive whiskey collection. We lived in a small house in the outskirts of Philadelphia. Nothing fancy, but it was home. I worked as a night shift nurse at the local hospital, coming home at 3 or 4 in the morning with my feet aching and my eyes burning from exhaustion. Richard worked in sales, traveling constantly, always with an excuse for why he could not make it to dinner or why he missed another school play. When Megan was born, I thought things might change. I thought becoming a father would soften him, make him realize what truly mattered. But Richard held her once in the hospital, smiled for a photograph, and then handed her back to me like she was someone else's responsibility. And for the next 8 years, she was entirely mine. I would come home from a 12-hour shift, my scrubs stained with things I do not want to remember, and I would find Megan asleep on the couch because Richard had forgotten to put her to bed. I would carry her to her room, tuck her in, kiss her forehead, and then set my alarm for 5 hours later so I could take her to school before heading back to the hospital. Richard was never there for the parent-teacher conferences. He never knew what size shoes Megan wore or that she was allergic to strawberries. He never sat with her during thunderstorms when she was scared of the lightning. That was all me. When Megan was 8 years old, Richard came home one evening and told me he was leaving. No warning, no discussion, no attempt to work things out. He had met someone else, a younger woman from his office named Diane, and he was starting a new life with her. Just like that, 23 years of marriage dissolved like sugar in hot water. He left us with a mountain of debt and a mortgage I could barely afford. The divorce was quick and cruel. Richard got his freedom, and I got every bill he had ever ignored. For months I did not know how we would survive, but we did. We survived because I refused to let my daughter see me fall apart. I took on a second job working weekends at a grocery store, stocking shelves and running the cash register. I learned to live on 4 hours of sleep. I stopped buying coffee because those $3 could go toward Megan's school supplies. I wore the same 2 pairs of work shoes for 4 years, even when the soles were so thin I could feel every pebble on the sidewalk. There were nights when I would come home at 3 in the morning, check on Megan sleeping peacefully in her bed, and then sit at the kitchen table crying into my hands. Not because I was sad, but because I was so tired that crying was the only release I had left. I sold my car, the little Honda Civic that Richard had always mocked as beneath him. I started taking the bus to work a 2-hour commute, each way that ate into what little rest I could get. But selling that car meant I could afford to send Megan to a better school in the next district, a school where she would have opportunities I never had. Men asked me out over the years. There was a doctor at the hospital, a kind man named Daniel, who brought me coffee during late shifts and always remembered my birthday. There was a neighbour, a widower named Frank, who offered to help fix things around the house and never asked for anything in return. I said no to all of them, not because I did not want companionship, but because I was terrified of bringing anyone into Megan's life who might hurt her the way Richard had hurt me. I made my daughter my entire world. Everything I did was for her. But somewhere along the way, something changed. As Megan grew older, she started to pull away. In middle school, she was embarrassed when I showed up to events in my nursing scrubs because I had come straight from work. In high school, she stopped inviting friends over, always finding excuses to meet them elsewhere. She never said it directly, but I could feel it. She was ashamed of our small house, our old furniture, our life that looked nothing like the lives of her wealthier classmates. I told myself it was normal. Teenagers are supposed to push away from their parents. It is part of growing up. So I gave her space. I swallowed my hurt and kept providing, kept sacrificing, kept loving her from a distance she seemed to need. Megan got into a good college on a partial scholarship. I paid for the rest by working overtime and taking out loans I am still paying off today. She studied business, graduated with honors, and got a job at a prestigious company in New York City. And then she was gone. Phone calls became rare, visits became rarer. She always had an excuse. Work was busy, she was traveling, she would come home next month, next holiday, next year. But next never came. I kept sending birthday cards, Christmas gifts, care packages with her favorite homemade cookies. I never knew if she received them because she rarely acknowledged them. But I kept sending them anyway because that is what mothers do. We keep loving even when love is not returned. 3 years after Megan moved to New York, I received a phone call that changed everything I thought I knew about my daughter. She told me she had met someone. His name was Jonathan Whitmore, and she was going to marry him. Her voice was different on that call. Higher pitched, more polished, like she was performing a character rather than talking to her mother. She gave me the date of the wedding and told me an invitation would arrive in the mail. I was overjoyed. My little girl was getting married. Despite the distance that had grown between us, this felt like a chance to reconnect, to be part of her life again. I imagined helping her choose flowers, tasting wedding cake samples, holding her hand while she tried on dresses. I imagined all the things mothers dream about when their daughters get engaged. But when I asked about meeting Jonathan and his family before the wedding, Megan's voice turned cold. She said it was not necessary. Everything was being handled. I should just show up on the day. I did not understand at the time why she was being so distant about her own wedding, but I convinced myself she was just stressed, just busy, just overwhelmed with planning. I made excuses for her, because that is what I had always done. The invitation arrived 2 weeks later. It was the most elegant thing I had ever held. Heavy cream-coloured cardstock with gold embossed lettering. The Whitmore and Bennett families request the honour of your presence. Bennett. Megan had kept Richard's last name for the invitation, not mine. I noticed that, but I pushed the hurt aside. I called Megan to thank her for the invitation and to ask about details. Could I arrive the day before to help set up? Should I bring anything? Was there a rehearsal dinner I should attend? Her answers were short and dismissive. No, I should not come early. No, I did not need to bring anything. No, there was no rehearsal dinner for me to attend. Just show up on the day of the wedding, she said. That is all I need from you. That is all I need from you. Those words echoed in my head for days afterward, but I still did not understand. Not yet. I started researching Jonathan Whitmore out of curiosity. What I found took my breath away. The Whitmores were one of the wealthiest families on the East Coast. They owned a chain of luxury hotels that stretched from Boston to Miami. Jonathan's father, Gregory Whitmore, was regularly featured in business magazines as one of the most influential entrepreneurs in America. His mother, Evelyn Whitmore, was a society fixture, constantly photographed at charity galas and exclusive events. My daughter was marrying into a world I could not even imagine. I felt a mix of pride and unease. Pride that Megan had built a life so different from the one I had given her. Unease because I suddenly understood why she had been keeping me at arm's length. In the world of the Whitmores, a night shift nurse who took the bus to work was not exactly an asset, but I pushed those thoughts away. She was still my daughter. Blood is thicker than champagne and caviar. Surely she would not forget that. 2 weeks before the wedding, I happened to call Megan at an unusual time. She must have thought I was someone else because she answered differently, her voice casual and unguarded. She was mid-conversation with someone, and I heard her say words that shattered something inside me. No, my mother passed away years ago. It's just been me and my aunt who raised me. There was a pause, and then she realized it was me on the line. Her voice changed instantly, becoming tense and defensive. Mom, why are you calling? I told you I would call you back later. I could not speak. I could not breathe. My daughter had told someone, probably Jonathan, probably his family, that I was dead. She had erased me from her story entirely. Megan, I finally managed to say, what did you just say about me? She was silent for a long moment. Then she sighed the way she used to sigh when I asked her to clean her room as a teenager. It's complicated, Mom. You wouldn't understand. Just come to the wedding and everything will be fine. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my kitchen for hours that night staring at the wall. My daughter had told the man she was going to marry that I did not exist. She had looked at her future in-laws and decided I was too shameful to acknowledge. I should have confronted her. I should have demanded an explanation. I should have refused to attend a wedding where I was apparently supposed to be a ghost. But I did not do any of those things, because she was my daughter. And despite everything, I still wanted to see her walk down the aisle. I still wanted to be there for the most important day of her life, even if she did not want me there. So I kept silent. I finished paying for my dress. I polished my grandmother's pearl necklace, the one I had been saving to give Megan as a wedding gift. And I counted the days until I would drive 3 hours to Connecticut to watch my daughter marry a man who thought I was dead. The morning of the wedding, I woke up at 5 o'clock, even though the ceremony was not until 4 in the afternoon. I could not sleep anyway. I had been lying awake most of the night, rehearsing what I would say to Megan, imagining how the day might unfold. I showered and styled my hair, carefully pinning it up the way I used to wear it for special occasions when Megan was young. I put on makeup for the first time in months, taking extra care with my foundation to hide the dark circles under my eyes. I slipped into my sage green dress, the one I had saved 3 months to afford, and looked at myself in the mirror. For a moment, I felt beautiful. I felt like a mother, ready to celebrate her daughter's happiness. I packed the pearl necklace in a small velvet box, tucking it safely into my purse. I had written a card to go with it, telling Megan how much I loved her, how proud I was of the woman she had become. I hoped that maybe this gift passed down from my grandmother to my mother to me would remind her of where she came from, would remind her that she was loved. I rented a car for the drive because the bus would have taken 5 hours. The rental cost more than I could really afford, but this was my daughter's wedding. Some expenses cannot be avoided. The drive to Connecticut was beautiful. Rolling hills, autumn leaves just starting to turn gold and orange blue sky stretching forever. I played old songs on the radio, the ones Megan and I used to sing together on road trips when she was little. For those 3 hours, I let myself be hopeful. I let myself imagine that everything would be okay. The venue was a resort called Westbrook Manor. I had looked it up online, but pictures did not prepare me for the reality. It was enormous, a sprawling estate with manicured gardens and a lake that sparkled in the afternoon sun. Luxury cars lined the entrance, BMWs and Mercedes, and a few Rolls-Royces. My rented Hyundai looked comically out of place. I pulled up to the gate and gave my name to the security guard. He checked his list, frowned, checked again. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your name is not on the VIP guest list." I felt my stomach drop. There must be some mistake. I'm the mother of the bride. The guard looked at me skeptically. "The mother of the bride is listed as deceased, ma'am. I'm going to need you to wait here while I make a call." Deceased. She had not just told Jonathan I was dead. She had written it into the official wedding documentation. I sat in my car, hands trembling, while the guard made phone calls. 20 minutes passed, then 30. I watched other guests drive through the gate without being stopped laughing and chatting, dressed in designer outfits that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Finally, the guard returned. "You can go in, ma'am. The bride has approved your entry, but you'll need to check in at the side entrance, not the main reception area." The side entrance, not the front door, not where the real guest would enter. I thanked him anyway and drove through. I parked in the overflow lot at the back of the property and walked toward the building, my heels sinking slightly into the grass. The side entrance led to a service corridor. Blank walls and fluorescent lighting, nothing like the grand interiors I could glimpse through windows as I walked. A staff member in a black uniform met me and led me through a maze of hallways until we emerged into the main event space. It was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers, walls of white roses, hundreds of chairs arranged in perfect rows, facing an arch covered in cascading flowers. Guests were already mingling champagne glasses and hand jewelry glittering under the lights. No one looked at me. I was invisible. I was standing near a pillar trying to orient myself when a voice behind me spoke. "And who might you be?" I turned to find a woman in her 60s, perfectly coiffed silver hair, a champagne-coloured gown that probably cost more than my car. Her eyes were cold, appraising me the way a person might appraise a piece of furniture they were considering discarding. "I'm Carol," I said, extending my hand. "I'm Megan's mother." The woman's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, then shock, then something that looked almost like disgust. "That's impossible. she said, not taking my hand. Megan's mother is dead. She passed away years ago. I lowered my hand, feeling the sting of rejection. I'm afraid I'm very much alive. The woman stared at me for a long moment, then turned sharply and walked away. I would learn later that she was Evelyn Whitmore, Jonathan's mother, the woman my daughter had apparently appointed as her surrogate parent. Moments later, I saw Megan approaching through the crowd. She was wearing her wedding dress layers of white tulle and lace that made her look like a princess from a fairy tale. She was beautiful. So beautiful it made my heart ache. But her face was not beautiful. It was twisted with anger. She reached me and grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Without a word, she pulled me toward a corner away from the other guests. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "You invited me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You sent me an invitation." "I sent you an invitation because there are traditions, because people expect the parents of the bride to be present. I didn't expect you to actually show up and cause a scene." "I'm not causing a scene, Megan. I just wanted to see you get married." She laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "You want to ruin everything I've built. You want to embarrass me in front of Jonathan's family." "I would never do that. I love you." "Love." She spat the word like it was poison. "Your kind of love is a weight around my neck. Look at you. Look at what you're wearing. You look like a waitress at a retirement home." I felt tears prick at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Megan, please. I'm your mother." "No." Her voice was ice. "My mother died a long time ago. That's the story I told, and that's the story that stays. You want to be at this wedding, fine, but you're sitting at table 17. And if anyone asks, you're a distant family friend, not my mother, never my mother." She released my arm and straightened her dress, her face smoothing back into the perfect bride mask. "Do you understand?" I understood. I understood more than she knew, but I nodded anyway, because she was still my daughter. And some part of me, some foolish, hopeful part, still believed she might come to her senses. Still believed she might remember who had held her during thunderstorms and worked double shifts to pay for her education. "Good," she said. "Table 17, it's near the kitchen." And then she walked away, leaving me standing alone in the corner of her perfect wedding. Table 17 was exactly where Megan had described. It was pushed against the wall near the kitchen doors so close that every time a server came or went, I could feel the rush of warm air and smell the roasting meat. The table was small, cramped, covered with a plain white cloth, rather than the elaborate linens that dressed the other tables. When I arrived at my assigned seat, I found 5 other people already there. They were not wearing evening gowns or tailored suits. They were wearing black uniforms, white aprons folded in their laps. They were the waitstaff taking their break between courses. I stood there for a moment, processing what Megan had done. She had not just seated me away from the other guests. She had seated me with the servants. She had made me her own mother, part of the help. The servers looked up at me with curious expressions. I could tell they were wondering why a woman in a formal dress was standing at their table. "Are you lost?" one of them asked a young man with tired eyes. I forced a smile. "No, this is where I'm supposed to be." I sat down in the empty chair, arranged my dress, and folded my hands in my lap. The servers exchanged glances but did not say anything. They were too professional to question a guest, even one who clearly did not belong. From my position near the kitchen, I could see the entire reception hall stretching before me. The head table was at the far end, elevated on a platform so everyone could admire the bride and groom. I could see Megan laughing at something Jonathan said, her hand resting on his arm, her smile radiant. She looked happy. Genuinely happy, and despite everything she had done to me, despite being relegated to a table with the kitchen staff, I felt a small spark of joy for her, because I was her mother, and mothers want their children to be happy even when those children treat them like strangers. "You're not really a friend of the family, are you?" I turned to find a young woman sitting beside me, perhaps 25 years old, with kind brown eyes and dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her name tag read Harper. "What makes you say that?" I asked. Harper shrugged. "People who are friends of the family don't get seated at the staff table, and they don't look at the bride the way you're looking at her." "How am I looking at her? Like you love her, like you'd do anything for her, like she broke your heart and you're still here anyway." I was silent for a moment, unsure how to respond. This stranger had seen through me in seconds. "I'm her mother." I finally said the words coming out before I could stop them. "But she doesn't want anyone to know that." Harper's eyes widened. Her mother, but they said that I was dead. I know, that's the story she told. Harper looked toward the head table, then back at me. Her expression had shifted from curiosity to something like outrage. That's awful, she said. How could she do that? I've been asking myself that question for years. We sat in silence as the wedding ceremony concluded and the reception began in earnest. I watched from my distant corner as Megan and Jonathan had their first dance, as the father of the groom gave a toast as champagne flowed and laughter filled the air. Then came the family candle lighting ceremony. A tradition the officiant explained where the parents of the bride and groom light candles to symbolize the joining of two families. Gregory and Evelyn Whitmore approached the table, each lighting a candle for the groom's side. Then it was time for the bride's side. I expected awkwardness. I expected some hastily arranged substitute. What I did not expect was for Evelyn Whitmore herself to step forward and light the candle on Megan's behalf. Since Megan's beloved mother is no longer with us, the officiant said, his voice solemn, Mrs. Evelyn Whitmore has graciously agreed to represent the maternal blessing for the bride. I watched as the woman who had looked at me with disgust just hours ago took my place. She lit the candle that should have been lit by my hands. She received the applause that should have been for me. She stood where I should have stood, and Megan watched it happen with a smile on her face. I gripped the velvet box in my purse so hard I thought I might crush it. My grandmother's pearls passed down through generations of women in my family, meant for my daughter on her wedding day. What was I supposed to do with them now? Are you okay? Harper whispered beside me. I was not okay. I was very far from okay. But I nodded anyway. The dinner service began. Waiters glided between tables, delivering plates of food that looked like artwork. At our table, we received the same dishes as everyone else, just served without the flourish. The servers around me ate quickly, knowing they would need to return to work soon. I barely touched my food. I was too busy watching the head table, watching Megan play the role of perfect bride, watching her pretend I did not exist. Then came the parent speeches. Gregory Whitmore spoke first, a polished address about family legacy and the joy of welcoming Megan into the Whitmore name. The guests applauded politely. Then Megan stood up. She took the microphone and looked out at the crowd, her eyes glistening with what appeared to be genuine emotion. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, she said, but I especially want to thank my mother-in-law, Evelyn. Mom. She paused, letting the word hang in the air. You've been the mother I never had. When I lost my own mother years ago, I thought I would never feel that maternal love again. But you opened your heart to me. You welcomed me into your family. You gave me something I thought was gone forever. The crowd awed. Evelyn dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Jonathan squeezed Megan's hand. And I sat at table 17, surrounded by empty plates and tired servers, listening to my daughter thank another woman for being her mother. Harper reached over and squeezed my hand. She did not say anything. There was nothing to say. The reception continued with music and dancing. Guests flooded the dance floor, champagne continued to flow, and everyone seemed to be having the time of their lives. Everyone except me. I remained at table 17, watching from my exile near the kitchen doors. The servers had returned to their duties, leaving me alone at the small table. I must have looked pathetic, a middle-aged woman in a sage green dress, clutching her purse like a lifeline, watching a party she was never meant to attend. But I stayed, because despite everything, I could not bring myself to leave without saying goodbye, without at least trying one more time to reach my daughter. Around 9 o'clock, there was a commotion near the bar. A server had stumbled, sending a tray of red wine cascading onto a guest's white designer gown. The woman shrieked, drawing attention from across the room. Staff rushed to help, managers appeared out of nowhere, and guests craned their necks to see what had happened. In the chaos, Megan hurried over to handle the situation. She was the bride after all, and this was her perfect day being disrupted. She spoke urgently with the venue manager, directed servers to bring club soda and towels, and tried to calm the hysterical guest. And then she saw me. I had stood up from table 17, thinking perhaps I could help. Years of nursing had taught me how to handle crisis situations calmly, but Megan did not see a mother offering assistance. She saw an intruder about to expose her lies. Her face transformed. The composed bride mask cracked, revealing something ugly underneath. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "I was just trying to help," I said quietly. "The situation seems stressful." "You're the situation," she hissed. I told you to stay at your table. I told you not to draw attention. A few guests had stopped to watch. I could see them whispering, wondering what was happening. Megan, please, I said. Can we just talk privately for a moment? No, we can't. She raised her voice, playing to the gathering audience. I don't know who you are or why you're here, but you need to leave. Security. I felt the blood drain from my face. Megan, I'm your mother. My mother is dead, she said, her voice cold and clear. I don't know what kind of sick game you're playing, but you're not welcome here. You're an intruder and I want you removed. 2 security guards approached, one on each side of me. Ma'am, one of them said, we're going to have to ask you to come with us. I looked at Megan, searching her face for any sign of the little girl I had raised. The child who had held my hand crossing the street. The teenager who had cried on my shoulder after her first heartbreak. The young woman I had worked so hard to put through college. There was nothing there, just a stranger wearing my daughter's face. Okay, I said quietly. I'll go. I let the security guards escort me toward the exit. Guests watched us pass, their whispers following like a wave. I kept my head high, refused to cry, refused to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing me break. But as we neared the doors, a voice rang out across the room. Wait, stop! It was Jonathan. He was striding across the dance floor, his face troubled. He reached us just as the security guards were about to lead me outside. Don't take her anywhere, he said. Not until someone explains to me what's going on. Megan hurried over, her smile back in place. Jonathan, honey, this is just a confused woman who wandered in from somewhere. Security is handling it. A confused woman. Jonathan looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. Megan, this woman just said she's your mother. She's lying. She's mentally ill or something. My mother died years ago, you know that. Jonathan's jaw tightened. Then why does she know your name? Why was she seated at a table? Why does she have an invitation? Megan faltered. Someone must have made a mistake. Mrs. Whitmore. A new voice joined the conversation. It was Harper, the young server, who had sat with me at table 17. She was holding her phone, her expression apologetic but determined. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think there's something you should see. She held out her phone to Jonathan. On the screen was a newspaper article, a few years old, but clear enough to read. It was about Megan's college scholarship, and it included a photograph of Megan and me at her high school graduation. The caption read, Megan Bennett, with her mother Carol, whose sacrifices made this achievement possible. Jonathan stared at the screen. Then he looked at me. Then at Megan. This is her, he said slowly. This woman in the picture, this is her. He pointed at me. Megan's face went white. Jonathan, I can explain. Explain that you told me your mother was dead when she was alive the whole time, that you had her seated with the waitstaff at our wedding, that you just tried to have her thrown out like a criminal? You don't understand, Megan said, her voice rising with desperation. You don't understand what it's like. She's not like us. She would have ruined everything. Your parents would have looked down on me if they knew I came from what? Jonathan's voice was quiet now, which somehow made it more terrible. From a mother who worked 2 jobs to raise you. From a woman who clearly loves you enough to sit through a wedding where you pretended she didn't exist. Megan opened her mouth, but no words came out. By now, Gregory and Evelyn Whitmore had made their way over. They stood slightly apart, watching the scene unfold. Evelyn's face was unreadable. Gregory's eyes moved between me and his son with an expression I could not identify. Jonathan, Gregory said finally, perhaps we should discuss this privately. No. Jonathan shook his head. I think everyone here deserves to know the truth about the woman I just married. I did not plan what happened next. I did not intend to make a speech or create a scene. But standing there, watching my daughter's lies unravel, something shifted inside me. I was tired. Tired of being invisible. Tired of being denied. Tired of loving someone who was ashamed of my existence. So when the room fell silent, waiting to see what would happen, I stepped forward. May I say something? Jonathan looked at me and nodded. I took a breath. My voice, when it came out, was steadier than I expected. My name is Carol, and yes, I am Megan's mother, her real mother, the one who held her when she had nightmares, the one who worked double shifts so she could have new shoes for school, the one who sold her car and rode the bus for 2 hours each way so Megan could go to a better school. I looked at Megan, but I was not speaking to her anymore. I was speaking to everyone. When Megan's father left us, she was 8 years old. I worked as a night shift nurse and a weekend cashier for 15 years to give her everything I could. I wore the same 2 pairs of shoes until they fell apart. I skipped meals so she could have lunch money. I never took a vacation, never bought myself anything nice, never dated again, because I was afraid of bringing anyone into her life who might hurt her. The room was completely silent. Even the music had stopped. I did not come here tonight to cause trouble. I came because my daughter was getting married and I wanted to see her happy. I came because, despite everything, I love her. I will always love her. I reached into my purse and pulled out the velvet box. I walked forward until I was standing directly in front of Megan. "This was my grandmother's," I said. "It was passed down to my mother and then to me. I was going to give it to you today as a wedding gift. These pearls have been worn by every bride in our family for 4 generations. I set the box on the nearest table. But I realize now that you don't want anything from me. You don't want my love, my sacrifices, or my history. You want a clean slate, a story without me in it, so I'll give you that. After tonight, you won't have to pretend I'm dead anymore. You can just pretend I never existed at all." I turned to face the crowd, these wealthy strangers who had watched my daughter erase me. "I apologize for disrupting your evening. I know none of you asked to be part of this. But I want you to know that I'm not ashamed of who I am. I'm not ashamed of being a nurse or taking the bus or wearing a dress that cost less than your appetizers. I'm proud of the life I built. I'm proud of the work I did. And I'm proud that I raised a daughter strong enough to fight her way into a world like this, even if the way she did it broke my heart." I straightened my shoulders and looked at Megan one last time. "Goodbye, sweetheart. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I hope it makes you happy." Then I turned and walked toward the door. No one stopped me. No one said a word. But as I reached the exit, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Harper, the young server who had been kind to me all evening. "Mrs. Carroll," she said, slightly out of breath. "Wait, please." I stopped but did not turn around. Harper came around to face me. Her eyes were wet. "I just wanted to say, what you did in there was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. You didn't yell. You didn't attack anyone. You just told the truth with so much dignity. I want you to know that I'll never forget it. You showed me what real strength looks like." I felt my composure crack slightly. A single tear escaped down my cheek. "Thank you, Harper. You were very kind to me tonight. Kinder than anyone." She hugged me. Then this stranger I had just met held me the way my own daughter never would, and for a moment I let myself be held. Then I gently pulled away, smiled at her, and walked out into the night. Outside, the air was cool and clean. Stars were beginning to appear overhead. I could hear the muffled sounds of the reception behind me, the party continuing despite the drama. I did not look back. I did not wait to see if Megan would come running after me, begging for forgiveness. I knew she would not. I called a taxi on my phone and waited by the entrance. When it arrived, I climbed in, gave my address, and watched the Westbrook Manor disappear in the rearview mirror. I had walked into that wedding as an uninvited guest. I walked out as a woman who had finally stopped apologizing for existing. The first 3 days after the wedding were the hardest of my life. I returned to my small apartment in Philadelphia, hung my sage green dress in the closet, and did not leave my bedroom for 72 hours. I cried until there were no tears left. I slept in fits and starts, waking from dreams, where Megan was a little girl again reaching for my hand, only to find myself alone in the dark. I did not eat. I did not shower. I did not answer the phone when my coworkers called to check on me. I simply lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand where I had gone wrong. Was it something I did? Something I failed to do? Had I loved her too much, too little, in the wrong way? I replayed every memory, searching for the moment when my daughter had started hating me. On the 4th day, there was a knock at my door. I ignored it. I was not fit to see anyone. I had not brushed my hair in days, and I was still wearing the same pajamas I had put on when I got home. The knocking continued. Then I heard a voice. "Carol, it's Gloria from work. I'm not leaving until you open this door." Gloria was a fellow nurse a few years older than me, with a no-nonsense attitude and a heart of gold. We had worked together for over a decade, but I had never considered us close friends. She was just someone I saw in the hallways, chatted with during breaks, carpooled with occasionally when our shifts aligned. I dragged myself to the door and opened it. Gloria took one look at me and pushed past me into the apartment. "Good Lord, Carol, You look like death warmed over. When did you last eat? I don't remember, I admitted. She marched into my kitchen, opened cabinets, found a can of soup. Within minutes, she had it heating on the stove. You're going to eat this, she said, and then you're going to take a shower. And then you're going to tell me what happened at that wedding, because something clearly went very wrong. I did not have the energy to argue. I ate the soup. I took the shower. And then I sat on my couch, wrapped in a bathrobe, and told Gloria everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Your daughter is a fool, she finally said. A complete and utter fool. But you already know that. I keep asking myself what I did wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Some children grow up and become strangers, and it's not because of anything their parents did or didn't do. Sometimes people just choose paths that lead them away from the people who love them most. How do I move on from this? Gloria considered the question. You start by getting out of this apartment. You start by doing something for someone other than yourself. Have you ever thought about volunteering? I had not. Between working and raising Megan and just surviving, there had never been time. There's a nursing home near here, Gloria said. Sunrise Senior Living. They're always looking for volunteers to spend time with the residents. Reading to them, playing cards, just talking. These are people who are forgotten by their own families, Carol. Maybe helping them would help you too. I was skeptical, but I had no better ideas. The following weekend, I showed up at Sunrise Senior, living with no expectations. What I found changed my life. The residents were exactly as Gloria had described. Elderly men and women, many with no family left, or families who never visited. They were lonely, isolated, hungry for human connection. I started coming every Saturday. I would read books aloud to a woman named Dorothy who had macular degeneration. I would play chess with a man named Walter who had been a history professor. I would simply sit and hold the hand of residents who were too far gone to speak, but who still craved the comfort of touch. And slowly, week by week, something began to heal inside me. I started writing in a journal, recording my thoughts and feelings in a way I never had before. I wrote letters to Megan that I never sent, pouring out everything I wanted to say. I wrote about my childhood, my marriage, my struggles. I wrote about the night of the wedding. I wrote until my hand cramped and my eyes blurred. I began to understand that I had spent my entire adult life defining myself through my relationship to others. I was Richard's wife. I was Megan's mother. I was a nurse who cared for patients. But who was I, just as Carol, independent of anyone else? I started taking walks in the morning before work. I joined a book club at the library. I learned to cook new recipes instead of eating the same 5 meals I had been making for decades. Small changes, but they added up. 3 months after the wedding, I realized I had gone an entire day without thinking about Megan. That felt like both a betrayal and a victory. 5 months after the wedding, Gloria invited me to a dinner party at her house. I wore a new dress, one I had bought for myself, without agonizing over the cost. I laughed at jokes, told stories, felt like a person again instead of a shell. 6 months after the wedding, a letter arrived in my mailbox. It was from Megan. I recognized her handwriting on the envelope. I held it for a long time before opening it. The letter was short, just 1 page. Megan wrote that the marriage was in trouble. Jonathan had not forgiven her for what happened at the wedding. His parents, especially Gregory, had lost respect for her when they learned the truth. The perfect life she had constructed was crumbling. She did not apologize. Not once. She did not ask how I was doing or acknowledge what she had done to me. The letter was entirely about her problems, her struggles, her disappointment that things had not worked out the way she planned. I read the letter twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. I did not respond. Not because I hated her, not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood that I deserved more than a daughter who only reached out when she needed something. I deserved to be loved for who I was, not tolerated when convenient. Loving Megan did not mean I had to accept being treated like nothing. The silence I had kept at the wedding was not weakness. It was strength. It was the choice not to become bitter, not to create a scene, not to lower myself to cruelty. And walking away both that night and now was not abandonment. It was self-preservation. It was the hardest kind of love, the kind that says, I love you enough to let you go until you can love me back properly. Maybe that day would come. Maybe Megan would grow up, gain perspective, understand what she had thrown away, or maybe she never would. I could not control that. What I could control was how I lived my own life. and I chose to live it with dignity, with purpose, with the quiet confidence of a woman who knew her own worth. The night of the wedding, my daughter sat me at a table with the waiters. She called me an intruder. She tried to erase me from her story, but I left that reception with my head held high. I walked out not as a victim, but as a survivor. And in the end, her perfect wedding became a scene she would have to explain for the rest of her life. Me, I just kept living. I want to leave you with this thought. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest, and sometimes the bravest thing we can do is not fight back, not scream, not beg. Sometimes the bravest thing is to simply stand in our truth, speak it quietly, and walk away. If you have ever been made to feel invisible by someone who should have cherished you, I want you to know that your worth is not determined by how others treat you. You are enough exactly as you are. And the people who cannot see that are not your people, even if they share your blood. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved to save yourself? How did you find the strength to keep going? Share your story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. And if you want to hear more stories about ordinary people finding extraordinary strength, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for listening to my story. I wish you peace, I wish you healing, and I wish you the courage to know your own worth, no matter who tries to make you forget it. Take care of yourselves, and remember you deserve to be seen.